Be detached from desire your whole life long. These were the words of Miyamoto Musashi, the undefeated swordsman of Japan. In his final days, as his body grew weaker, but his spirit sharper than ever, he sat alone in a cave and wrote down his last lessons, 21 principles called the Dokkodō, the path of aloneness. They were not written for applause, not for students, not even for fame. They were written as a personal code, the distilled wisdom of a man who had faced death more times than we can count, and who understood what enslaves the human spirit. And among those principles, one line cuts deeper than any blade. Be detached from desire your whole life long. Now pause for a moment. Ask yourself, how much of your life is shaped by desire? Most people live as if desire is oxygen. If I just get this job, this relationship, this amount of money, then I'll finally be at peace. But when the promotion arrives, the peace dissolves. When the relationship begins, a new insecurity appears. When the money comes, the appetite doubles. It is never enough. Because desire has no finish line, this isn't new. Even in Musashi's time, warriors craved glory, wealth, recognition. But our modern world has taken desire and multiplied it 1,000-fold. We live in an economy built on craving. Social media thrives on it. Every swipe, every like, every notification is engineered to make you want more. Advertising weaponizes it, telling you every day that you are incomplete, that happiness is just one purchase away. Even our self-image is shaped by desire, the desire to be seen, to be admired, to be envied. We are told that we are lacking, and so like thirsty wanderers in a desert, we chase mirages that vanish the moment we reach them. But Musashi's principle strikes like a sword through the fog. Detach from desire, not for a day, not for a year, but for your whole life long. Notice the weight of those words. He doesn't say control your desires. He doesn't say reduce them. He says be detached completely, entirely, for as long as you live. This is not about abandoning life. It is not about becoming numb, rejecting joy, or living as a cold ascetic. Musashi was no monk hiding from the world. He was a man who fought, who created, who lived fully. But he understood that the moment you are owned by desire, you are no longer free. To be detached from desire is to breathe without craving, to act without being chained to outcome, to live fully, but without the itch that makes you restless, weak, and dependent. And here lies the central question for us today. What did Musashi truly mean by detachment? And how can we live this principle in our chaotic, overstimulated modern world? Philosophical exploration. To truly understand Musashi's words, we need to step into his life. Miyamoto Musashi was not a monk sitting cross-legged in a temple. He was not a cloistered philosopher detached from the real world. He was a warrior, a man who lived with the constant risk of death. By the age of 13, he had fought and won his first duel. By the time he reached adulthood, he was already known across Japan as a dangerous and unpredictable swordsman, and by the end of his life, he had fought more than 60 duels and never lost. These were not duels against amateurs. Many of his opponents were masters in their own right, trained for years in established schools of swordsmanship. Yet Musashi walked away victorious every time. He was feared but also respected. He had wealth, he had reputation, he had everything a samurai could hope for. And yet, in his later years, Musashi chose a life of solitude. He retired not to a palace, not to a mansion filled with luxuries, but to a cave, Reigando, the spirit rock. There, with only a few possessions, he wrote his final words, the Dokkodo, the path of aloneness. Unlike his more famous work, the Book of Five Rings, which is a manual of combat and strategy, the Dokkodo was different. It was not about how to fight others. It was about how to fight yourself. It was about the spirit, how to live with clarity, strength, and independence of mind. The fifth principle is short, but it cuts deep. Be detached from desire your whole life long. But what is this desire Musashi speaks of? In his time, desire could mean wealth, gold coins, land, fine armor. It could mean fame, a name that echoed across provinces. It could mean comfort, fine food, silk clothing, the pleasures of the world. It could even mean attachments, love, friendship, dependence. And for a warrior, desire was dangerous. Desire made you predictable. If you fought for money, you could be bribed, and if you fought for glory, you could be manipulated. If you fought for love of life, you feared death. Desire was a chain, and Musashi wanted to fight unchained. He understood something subtle. Desire does not just create longing, it creates weakness. It creates fear of loss. It makes a man hesitate, and hesitation is death. But this wisdom was not uniquely Japanese. Across cultures, the greatest minds echoed the same truth. The Stoics spoke in one voice with Musashi. Epictetus said, "Freedom is not achieved by satisfying desires, but by eliminating them." Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength to the Stoics. Desire was a chain binding the soul, distracting it from virtue. The Buddha taught that craving is the root of suffering, that as long as the mind clings, it can never know peace. Seneca, the Roman philosopher, wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." Musashi, standing in his cave writing his last words, was speaking the same truth in the voice of a warrior. True strength is not found in feeding desire, but in mastering the self. Now, why does this principle matter for us? Not for samurai, not for monks, but for ordinary people in the 21st century. Because we live in an economy of desire. Everything around us is engineered to hook our cravings. The food industry designs meals loaded with sugar, fat, and salt, not to nourish, but to addict. Social media platforms compete for your attention with infinite scrolling, flashing colors, and carefully timed notifications. Entertainment floods us with constant stimulation. Advertising whispers into our ears every single day. You need this. Without it, you are incomplete, you are not enough. The result, a restless world, a generation addicted to wanting, a society where even when we achieve something, a promotion, a purchase, a milestone, it evaporates almost instantly. Peace dissolves, and a new craving takes its place. We are like runners chasing a finish line that keeps moving further away. No matter how fast we run, we never arrive. And here is the harsh truth. Desire has no finish line. Musashi knew this 400 years ago, and he gave us the antidote, detachment. Not rejection of life, not numbness, but detachment. The ability to live fully without being enslaved by what you crave. Because when you are detached from desire, you are free. You can fight without fear. You can work without desperation. You can love without clinging. You can live without being owned. This is why Musashi's principle is not outdated. It is medicine. Medicine for our overstimulated, hyper-distracted, consumer-driven age. But here comes the real challenge. How do we practice this? How can an ordinary person in today's world, with bills to pay, careers to build, families to care for, live detached from desire, without renouncing everything, without abandoning existence? That is the question we must now face. Practical application. Here are 6 ways to bring Musashi's principle into your life. Not as abstract philosophy, but as concrete daily practices to train detachment. Think of them as exercises for the spirit, much like a swordsman trains his body. 1. Practice voluntary simplicity. Learn to live below your cravings, not enslaved by them. Seneca said, "If you seek security in wealth, you will never be satisfied." Application. Once a week, deliberately deny yourself something you crave. Skip dessert. Resist the urge to buy something online. Leave your phone in another room for a few hours. Travel light when you could travel with more. Why? Because every time you say no to desire, you sharpen your inner blade. You remind yourself that you are not a slave to impulses. This is the art of voluntary discomfort. Musashi himself lived with little, a simple robe, a simple meal, and later in life, a cave with only his writing tools. To him, comfort was not strength, resilience was. In today's world, simplicity is a rebellion. It trains your mind to be content with less, so that when life takes something away and money, comfort, luxury, you remain unshaken. 2. Control the first impulse. Detachment begins with a single pause, Marcus Aurelius wrote. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but your estimate of it. Application. When desire strikes yours to grab your phone, to snack, to lash out, to buy something unnecessary, pause, take a breath, count to 5. Most desires are not rational. They are reflexes. Like sparks, they flare suddenly, demanding attention. But if you delay them even briefly, their fire weakens. The craving passes, leaving you stronger. This is micro-training for the mind. Each pause is a small duel against yourself. And just like Musashi, victory in small duels builds strength for larger ones. Imagine how different life feels when you act by choice, not by impulse. Detachment is not about removing desire, but about mastering it before it masters you. 3. Meditate on mortality. All desires shrink when faced with death. Marcus Aurelius. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think. Application. Each morning ask, if today were my last, would chasing this desire matter? The endless scrolling, the argument online, the purchase you don't need. Suddenly they look small, almost laughable, in the light of mortality. Musashi lived every duel with the possibility of death. His detachment was not philosophy in the abstract, it was survival. He could not afford to cling to life, possessions, or victory. His clarity came from standing daily on the edge. We avoid thinking of death, but Musashi leaned into it. And when you remember your own mortality, you learn to desire less and live more. 4. Focus on mastery, not consumption. Desire scatters the mind. Detachment sharpens it. Musashi. Do nothing that is of no use. Application. Set aside one block of time each day, even just an hour, for pure, undistracted focus. No notifications, no scrolling, no interruptions. Dedicate it to your craft, your work, your growth. Why? Because mastery demands focus, and desire is the enemy of focus. Desire wants novelty, the next video, the next app, the next distraction. Mastery wants depth. Musashi embodied mastery. He was not only a swordsman but also a painter, calligrapher, and philosopher. He did not chase consumption. He practiced creation. Every time you replace shallow consumption with deep creation, you move closer to Musashi's spirit, not scattered by desire but sharpened by discipline. 5. Journal the battle with desire. Detachment requires awareness. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Application. Each night write down 2 things. Where did I control desire today? Where did desire control me? Do not judge yourself, simply observe. Awareness is the first victory. The invisible war inside you becomes visible on paper. Musashi was a strategist, not just on the battlefield but in the mind. He studied his own weaknesses as if they were enemies. Journaling is how you map the terrain of desire, so you know where to fight next. Over time you'll see patterns, the triggers that pull you, the victories that strengthen you. Self-reflection becomes self-mastery. 6. Enjoy without clinging. Detachment is not about rejecting joy. It is about not clinging to it. Musashi. Step by step, walk the 1,000-mile road. Application. Eat your meal with gratitude, but don't need to repeat it tomorrow. Celebrate success, but don't depend on it to define you. Love deeply, but understand that all is temporary. This is not coldness. It is appreciation in its purest form. Clinging poisons joy with fear. Fear of loss, fear of change. Detachment allows you to enjoy things fully, because you don't demand that they last forever. Musashi's detachment did not make him numb. It made him free. He could engage with life fully, without chains. That is the paradox of detachment. You do not lose joy. You discover it. Musashi's principle is not about withdrawing from the world, but about entering it without chains. Each of these practices is a small way of training the mind, just as a warrior trains the body. Desire is not conquered once, it is faced daily. Step by step, you learn what Musashi knew, that true strength is not the sword in your hand, but the freedom in your heart. Conclusion. Musashi's 5th principle is not a gentle suggestion. It is a sword stroke across the illusions we live by. Be detached from desire your whole life long. This is not easy. It is not comfortable. It is a discipline that will test you every single day. But consider the alternative, a life pulled in 1,000 directions, always craving, always scrolling, always restless. That is not freedom. That is slavery disguised as choice. Musashi understood something most never will. True victory begins within. He was undefeated not only because of his sword, but because he conquered the one opponent no warrior escapes, himself. Desire could not bribe him, fear could not bind him, comfort could not weaken him. He lived and died on his own terms. And now the choice stands before you. You can keep chasing the next purchase, the next notification, the next fleeting hit of pleasure, and remain forever hungry. Or you can step onto the harder, narrower road, the road of discipline, clarity, and inner freedom. The road Musashi walked. Desire will whisper, the world will tempt you. But if you remember Musashi's words, if you practice detachment daily, you will move differently through life, calm in chaos, free in a world of chains. Musashi has already spoken, be detached from desire your whole life long. The rest is no longer up to him, it is up to you.